what prana is and what vitality is. And then we also talked about the centers and the force centers and things like that. And then we got into, I want to say, the spleen and the base of the spine. So we're starting to get into learning a bit about this kundalini journey through, I want to say, this guy, Arthur E. Powell. And I think we left off talking about the seat of the kundalini, or the serpent fire at the base of the spine center. And I know that we're going to get into this deeper later in the text, but sometimes that Arthur says sometimes it's labeled as a flaming cross, or it's a symbol sometimes used to represent the serpent fire residing in the base of the spine. Now, keep in mind, I always say this at the beginning of every broadcast, that it's good to keep a healthy amount of skepticism, although really keeping a curious, fiery kind of mind about it. Because you're not going to know the truth about any of this stuff unless you find out for yourself. So it's cool to study. Just like I'll say it's like this, just like the OBE experience, I was massively skeptical about that. And I think I listened to Robert Monroe's text, I want to say probably 4 times, the first book, before I even attempted it, because I just had to know, right? So that's the kind of curiosity that we take here in the Void Walking Land. You know, when you get so curious about something, it sounds so freaking cool, but you don't know. There's always a little bit of fear, I guess, attached to anything when it comes to conscious exploration. But, I mean, if you want to know, you want to know, right? And remember, fear isn't being fearless. Matter of fact, if you're fearless about lots of things, I would consider that to be a little bit of a, I guess that would be a form of psychosis. To have courage is to have fear and do it anyways, right? So you feel the fear, the uncomfort of it, and then you do it anyways. I'm not saying you run out and do black magic or anything like that. What I'm saying is if you really want to know, the only way to know is to do it, right? That's my stupid lecture for the day. All right, so we're at the Naval Center. Did I say, hey, what's up, Ryan? Ryan Gable's in the house. My brother. Hey, what's going on with you, brother? I'm hanging out in the background working. Ryan Gable, I saw you on YouTube the other day. No, you're not going to be uploading on YouTube because I don't make money from it. My show is based on revenue from my archive. Yeah, I'm with you. Totally with you on that. Ryan is a colleague of mine and was the late host on the Fringe FM before he moved to Ground Zero. And I think he's just kind of doing his own thing now, you know. And you're in Japan, right, bro? Are you married yet? I hope you're not. I hope I didn't miss the wedding. All right. So the Naval Center. Now, this is considered the second center at the navel or solar plexus, and this receives a primary force which radiates in 10 directions, there being 10 undulations or petals. Also, keep in mind, it's my understanding that the only way that anybody knows about this stuff is clairvoyance. I mean, am I wrong about that? I mean, other than practicing it, I guess we could say the only proof that anybody has is people that claim to be clairvoyant can see these things. Are any of you clairvoyant? I mean, for real, you know, because I can't see this stuff. I wouldn't consider myself clairvoyant. So we're talking about the Naval Center, the second center at the navel or the solar plexus. Its predominant color is a curious blending of various shades of red, though there is also a great deal of green in it, and it receives the green ray from the spleen center. That ray, also flooding the abdomen, vivifying the liver, kidneys, intestines, and the digestive apparatus generally, centering especially in the solar plexus. And then it kind of shows a big wheel, you know, with these colors. Now, this center is closely associated with feelings and emotions of various kinds. The corresponding astral center, when awakened, gives the power of feeling. A sensitive I guess, a sensitiveness to all sorts of influence, though without as yet anything like the definite comprehension that comes from the faculties corresponding to seeing or hearing. So when, therefore, the etheric center becomes active, the man begins in the physical body to be conscious of astral influences, vaguely feeling friendliness or hostility, or that some places are pleasant and others unpleasant, but without the least knowing why. And the Sanskrit name for this center is the Manipura. I guess this is where you get, when people say, man, I feel it in my gut, or have a gut feeling about it, right? What's up, Sudi? All right, so the next one is the heart center. So now that we've talked about the third center, that near the spleen, we pass next to the fourth center, that of the heart. Now this chakram has 12 spokes or radiations and is a glowing golden color, and it receives the yellow ray from the spleen center, and when the current is full and strong, it produces strength and regularity in the heart section. Flowing round the heart chakram, the yellow ray also interpenetrates the blood, and thus is carried all over the body. It also passes on to the brain and permeates it, though directing itself principally to the 12-petaled flower in the middle of the seventh or highest center. In the brain, it confers the power of high philosophical and metaphysical thought. The corresponding astral center, when awakened, endows a man with the power to comprehend and sympathize with, and so instinctively understands the feelings of others or other astral entities. The etheric center, therefore, makes a man aware, in his physical consciousness, of the joys and of sorrows of others, and sometimes even causes him to reproduce in himself by sympathy their physical aches and pains. In Sanskrit, this chakram is called the Anahata, or Anyahata. Probably butchering that too. All right, so next is the throat center. Now, this chakram is the fifth, and it has 16 spokes, and therefore 16 petals or divisions. In color, it shows a good deal of blue, but its general effect is silvery and gleaming, not unlike moonlight or rippling water. It receives the violet-blue ray from the spleen chakram, and this ray then appears to divide, the light blue remaining to course through and vivify the throat center, while the dark blue and violet pass on to the brain. The light blue gives health to the region of the throat. The strength and elasticity of the vocal cords of a great singer or speaker, for example, being accompanied by special brilliance and activity of this ray. The dark blue expends itself in lower central parts of the brain, while the violet floods the upper part and appears to give special vigor to the chakram at the top of the head, diffusing itself chiefly through the 960 petals of the outer part of the center. Ordinary thought is stimulated by the blue ray, mingled with part of the yellow from the heart center. And in some forms of idiocy, the yellow and blue violet flow to the brain is almost inhibited. Thought and emotion of a high spiritual type seem to depend largely upon the violet ray. The awakening of the corresponding astral centers gives the power of hearing on the astral plane, that is to say, the faculty which produces in the astral world the effect similar to that which in the physical world we call hearing. When the etheric center is aroused, the man in his physical consciousness hears voices, which sometimes make all kinds of suggestions to him. He may hear music or other less pleasant sounds. When fully working, it makes a man clairaudient, so far as the etheric and astral planes are concerned. And in Sanskrit, the name for this center is the Visuddha. I mean, I guess I could say, like, if this was really a thing, like if this is legitimate, I would consider myself where I've had some like clairaudient things happen to me. I've never had any clairvoyant. Like I can't look at somebody and see all this stuff, like they talk about. Or, I mean, maybe like if I'm out of body or something, but Live, Laugh, Love says, did you know Saturn, Venus, and the moon are supposed to line up and form a smiley face tomorrow? No, that's pretty cool. Actually, I didn't know that. What's up, Purple Pencils? Long time no see, brother. You've been working hard? Sure enough. Been busy at work. It's good to see you, man. I didn't know that. That's a cool smiley face thing. All right. So now the next one is the center between the eyebrows, the sixth center. That's between the eyebrows has 96 spokes. And in Indian books, however, it is mentioned as having only 2 petals. This being probably due to the fact that it presents the appearance of being divided into halves. Of these, the one is predominantly rose-colored, though with a great deal of yellow in it, and the other predominantly a kind of purplish blue. Now, the writer has been unable to find any specific description of the source of the pranic stream which flows into this center, though it is mentioned in the Inner Life on page 449 that the purplish blue appearance of one half of the center agrees closely with the colors of the special types of vitality that vivify it. This would seem to indicate the dark blue, maybe, and violet, maybe, ray which passes through the throat center and proceeds to the brain. The development of the corresponding astral centers confers the power to perceive definitely the nature and shape of astral objects instead of vaguely sensing their presence. The awakening of the etheric center causes a man to see objects and to have various sorts of waking visions of places or people. When just beginning to awaken, landscapes and clouds of color are half perceived. When fully developed, though, it brings about clairvoyance. The remarkable faculty of magnification of vision, or its converse, is associated with the center and will be described in the chapter on etheric sight. But in Sanskrit, the center is known as the ajna. You know what, man? It makes it seem like as soon as you line up all these centers or whatever, it makes it seem like you could become like an X-Man, you know, or a mutant of some kind. Let's see. All right, so the next one's at the center of the top of the head. The center, the seventh, situated at the top of the head, is somewhat different in construction from the other 6. It's described in Indian books as the 1,000-petaled lotus, though the actual number of radiations of the primary force is 960. In addition to this, it possesses a sort of subsidiary whirlpool or minor activity in its central portion, which has 12 undulations of its own. When fully alive, this chakram is perhaps the most resplendent of all, full of indescribable chromatic effects and vibrating with almost inconceivable rapidity. The central portion is gleaming white, flushed with gold in its heart. The center receives in its outer portion the violet ray, which passes through the throat center, while in its central portion it receives the yellow ray from the heart center. The arousing of the corresponding astral center rounds off and completes the astral life, endowing a man with the perfection of his faculties. With one type of individual, the astral chakrams corresponding to the 6th and 7th etheric chakrams both converge upon the pituitary body, the latter organ being practically the only direct link between the physical and the higher planes. I think other texts, other Rosicrucian books have kind of hinted towards that too, and I think Manly P. Hall as well. Well, now, with another type of person, however, while the 6th chakram is still attached to the pituitary body, the 7th is bent or slanted until it coincides with the atrophied organ known as the pineal gland, which with people of this type become a line of direct communication with the lower mental, without apparently passing through the intermediate astral plane in the ordinary way. Now, this explains the emphasis sometimes laid on the development of the pineal gland. The awakening of the etheric center enables a man, through it, to leave the physical body in full consciousness and also to re-enter it without the usual break, so that his consciousness will be continuous through the night and day. The real reason for Tantra, as practiced by the Roman Church, was to leave uncovered the Brahmanrandra, or Brahman, God, I hate this, Brahmarandra chakram. You believe that? The real reason for the Tantra, as practiced by the Roman Church, was to leave uncovered the Brahmarandra chakram so that there might be not even the slightest hindrance in the way of psychic force, which in their meditations the candidates were intended to try to arouse. I mean, this guy is stating this stuff like it's fact, man. You know? Let's see. What did word salad say? When I meditate, I can see those two petals. Really? Well, maybe you have the sight that this guy's talking about. That's a good question. El Natural's asking, do you see them with your eyes or when they're closed, like with your mind's eye? So, just as the dense physical body uses up its materials and discharges its waste products through the 5 excretory organs, the skin, lungs, liver, intestines, and kidneys, so does the etheric body use up the material and which it is supplied through physical food and absorption of the vitality globule, and discharges its waste particles in various ways. A chart of these discharges is appeared, and the results is shown being described as follows. Through the breath and the pores of the skin are expelled both the bluish-white particles from which the prana has been extracted. Such particles still charged with rose-colored prana as are superfluous to the requirements of the body, and also the atoms from the blue rays used by the throat center. I don't see, like, if you can see all this stuff, man, if you can see any, like, even a little bit of this stuff, I think that would be pretty cool. So through the excretory organs pass the emptied atoms of the green ray from the digestive system, and also, in the case of the ordinary man, those of the red-orange ray. Through the top of the head passes the atoms from the dark blue and violet rays. In a developed person, however, who has achieved the deflection upwards of the red-orange ray, the particles from this ray are discharged through the top of the head. These form a fiery cascade, frequently shown as a flame in ancient statues of Buddha and other saints. Atoms which have been emptied of prana become once more precisely like any other atoms, and some of them are absorbed by the body and enter into various combinations which are constantly being made, while others, which are not required, are thrown off through any convenient channel. In addition to this, the matter of the etheric double itself is also constantly being thrown out of the body through the pores of the skin, just as is gaseous matter, and consequently persons who are near one another are liable to absorb each other's etheric emanations. So I wonder if, like, you ever had anybody like get in your bubble? You know how they just like get up in your stuff? Do you think that's totally psychological? Where you're just like, man, dude, you're in my space. Back up a little bit. I wonder if like we can intuitively feel all this stuff that he's talking about. It's just a question, not a belief, just a wonder. Like if you can intuitively feel all of like this vitality or lack thereof coming from people. Because I know like women are really good at it. You know, they, for the most part in my life, women have been pretty good with intuition. You know how they say, man, there's just something about that person that, you know, and I'm always like, what are you talking about? I don't know what you're talking about. And then later on you figure out, oh shit, you know, you're kind of right. Maybe it's all psychological. Maybe it doesn't have anything to do with this. Okay. Where would I leave off here? The radiation of etheric matter is strongest from the ends. Okay. The radiation of the radiation of the etheric matter is strongest from the ends of the fingers and toes. Hence, great importance of scrupulous cleanliness in these parts of the body. A person with dirt under their fingernails, for example, is continually pouring forth a stream of unhealthy influence into the etheric world. Well, damn, I must have done that a million times. I've had dirt under my fingernails before. Like anytime I do dirty work. The physical emanations of the body, consisting largely of finely divided salts, appear to clairvoyant sight as multitudes of tiny forms, such as dice, stars, and double pyramids. The character of these tiny particles may be affected by loss of health, by a wave of emotion, or even a definite train of thought. In this connection, Professor Gates is reported as saying, A, that the material emanations of the living body differ according to the states of the mind, as well as the conditions of physical health, or B, that these emanations can be tested by the chemical reactions of some salts of selenium, and C, that these reactions are characterized by various tints of color according to the nature of the mental impressions. And finally, D, that 40 different emotion products, that 40 different emotion products, as he calls them, have already been obtained. This is pretty damn complex, man. Like, I'd have to read this and look at all these graphs probably, I don't know, 4 or 5 times before it all started to sink in. Remember, the same information is also given in the form of a distribution chart that you can look up, which gives a synthesis of these processes in graphic form. From the emanation of prana from the sun to the discharge from the body of the particles from which the prana has been extracted. So from the sun into the body and then the extraction. You guys want to see this graph? I mean, it's kind of it's kind of weird looking, honestly. Let me see if I can turn this on. I don't think I can though. Yeah, there it is. Look at this thing. Here, I'll just do it like this. So you can see how complex that they talk about all this. So you got 4 different wheels just down here at the seat of the kundalini. And that none of this is colored because this is an old text, right? So isn't that trippy? So if you guys want to look at like his graphs, just look up Arthur E. Powell. You'll be able to see it. Okay. All right. So next we're going to talk about the kundalini. Yeah, like the kundalini, right? Purple Pencil says, I do dirty work all the time. Toilets, yards, car, always clean mine, though. Yeah, I mean, it's getting a little bougie, isn't it? This whole kundalini thing. If you've got dirt under your fingernails or toes, maybe, I mean, realistically, though, like I know in Western thought, before you do like any kind of major ceremony, you definitely want to be clean. I mean, I get that. Making me look at my fingernails right now. All right, so the kundalini. So as we've already seen, kundalini, or the serpent fire, is one of the forces which emanate from the sun and is entirely separate and distinct from both fohat, which is considered like electricity, and prana, being, so far as is known, incapable of being converted into any form of these other forces. So kundalini is its own force and has been variously called the serpent fire, the fiery power, and the world's mother. To clairvoyant vision, it appears in very truth-like liquid fire as it is rushed through the body, and the course through which it ought to move is a spiraling one like the coils of a serpent. The name of the world's mother is appropriate because through it our various vehicles may be vivified. An ancient symbol of the spinal column and kundalini is that of the thyrsus, which is a staff with a pine cone on its top. In India, the same symbol is found, but instead of the staff, a stick of bamboo with 7 knots is used. The knots, of course, representing the 7 chakrams or force centers. In some modifications of the mysteries, a hollow iron rod said to contain fire was used instead of the thyrsus. It is said that the modern barber's pole, which is certainly a very ancient symbol, did y'all know that? With its spiraling bands and a knob at the end, has a similar significance. The modern barber being descended from the ancient, chirurgians or surgeons, who also practiced alchemy, which is a science originally spiritual rather than material. So kundalini exists, on all planes of which we know anything, and it also appears to have 7 layers of degrees of force. The astral body originally was an almost inert mass with only the vaguest consciousness, with no definite power of doing anything, and no clear knowledge of the world which surrounds it. Kundalini was then awakened at the astral level, in the center corresponding to the base of the spine, It moved to the second center near the navel and vivified it, thereby awakening in the astral body the power of feeling or sensitiveness without definite comprehension. Kundalini then passed to the third spleen, the fourth the heart, the fifth the throat, and then the sixth the eyebrows, and then the seventh the top of the head center in turn, awakening in each the various powers already described in previous chapters. So I know what some people are thinking right now. Does that correspond in another way to the serpent in the Garden of Eden when they awoke into the intellect, so to speak, and also in Revelations when you have the seven sinners or the seven seals, and you know that famous verse that Christ talks about in the Bible, if thine eye be single, the body will fill with light. Could be. I mean, it could be like a confirmation bias too, but it could be. The barber's pole is blood. What did you say? What are you saying? The barber's pole is blood and bandages. That's cool. Okay. El Natural says, Kundalini breathwork is intense and I can feel it coiling inside of me. That's really cool. Actually, that's damn cool. All right, so it goes from the base of the spine to the second to the third, the spleen, the heart, the throat, the eyebrows, and the top of the head. The mechanisms by means of which we become aware of astral happenings is interesting and should be clearly grasped by the student. Although in the physical body we have special organs, each located in a definite and fixed part of the body for seeing, hearing, and the rest, an entirely different arrangement is made in the astral body, specialized organs not being necessary for the attainment of the result aimed at. I mean, let's get real, though, right? In a lot of books that Manly P. Hall was talking about, okay, when he was talking about the organs, you know, all of the endocrine system and a lot of the things he was talking about, and he talked about clairvoyance a lot. Matter of fact, I'm pretty sure he discussed about how mediumship was dangerous and that the healthy thing to do was to train your self to become a clairvoyant. So when I read this kind of stuff, I have to think that was probably what this whole process is what he was talking about, or something related to it, right? Okay. The matter of the astral body is a condition of constant movement, the particles flowing and swirling about like those of boiling water. Also, too, listen, I'm not trying to get off track here, but I want you to think about like all of the symbols of alchemy as I'm reading this too. Like, if there was a way that you could decipher what's going on alchemically, or the 7 stages of alchemy, and let's just say that in alchemy, the kundalini, this whole process of awakening was hidden inside of alchemy too, as an energetic transformation. You know, because we can, the funny thing about alchemy is it works on every level. You can go in a lab and start doing stuff and it works. You could correspond it to psychology, like especially like Carl Jung, and it works. You can correspond it to a spiritual awakening or coming into authenticity, individuation, pretty much the same as Jungian psychology, and it works. But what a lot of people don't talk about is alchemy also explaining an energetic transformation that happens inside of you on this level. A matter of fact, if that's the case, is it one of its deepest secrets? It really shouldn't be secret. Sometimes I have to stop and let you know what the other side of my brain is doing while I'm reading this stuff. So, all right. So the matter of the astral body is in a condition of constant movement, the particles flowing and swirling about like those of boiling water. And all of them pass in turn through each of the 4 centers. And each of these centers then has the power of evoking from the particles of the astral body the ability to respond to a certain set of vibrations, corresponding to what in the physical world we call vibrations of light, sound, heat, and so forth. When therefore the astral centers are vivified and in working order, they confer these various powers on the whole of the matter of the astral body, so that the latter is enabled to exercise its powers in every part of itself. Consequently, a man functioning in his astral body can see equally well objects in front of him, behind, above, and below him. The chakrams or centers, therefore, cannot be described as organs of sense in the ordinary sense of that term, though they do convey the powers of sense to the astral body. I always wondered about that because, like, when you have an out of body experience, you don't have eyes or ears, so to speak. Like you don't have the organs, but yet you can still see, you can still hear. Isn't that weird? If you've had one like I'm talking about. But even when these astral senses are fully awake, it by no means follows that the man will be able to bring into his physical body and consciousness of their action. He may, in fact, in his physical consciousness, know nothing whatever of it. The only way in which the consciousness of these astral experiences can be brought into the physical brain is by means of the corresponding etheric centers, which must first be awakened and made active. The method of awakening is precisely similar to the adopted one in the astral body, by arousing the kundalini, which lies dormant in etheric matter in the center near the base of the spine. The arousing is achieved by a determined and long-continued effort of the will, bringing the center at the base of the spine into activity, being, in fact, precisely the awakening of the kundalini. Once this is aroused, it is by tremendous force that the other centers are vivified in turn. The effect on the centers is to bring into the physical consciousness the powers which were aroused by the development of the corresponding astral centers. In order to bring about these results, it is necessary that the serpent fire move to the chakrams in a certain order and in a certain way, which varies with different types of people. Occultists who understand these matters from first-hand knowledge are always exceedingly careful to give no clue to the order in which the serpent fire should be passed through the centers. The reason for this is on account of the very serious dangers, or the gravity of which can scarcely be exaggerated, awaiting those who arouse kundalini accidentally or prematurely. The most solemn warnings are uttered against attempting anything of the kind until the time is fully ripe, and unless under the guidance of a master or an experienced occultist. Blah. All right, so how many people do you think might have ended up in the crazy house because they did this? Hey, look, there's other books that talk about it too, man. Peace and harmony to you, Ronan. Let's see. Before kundalini is aroused, it is absolutely essential that a definite stage of moral purity be reached, and also that the will be strong enough to control the force. Some of the dangers connected with the serpent fire are purely physical, though. Its uncontrolled movement often produces intense physical pain, and it may readily tear tissues and even destroy physical life. It may also do permanent injury to vehicles higher than the physical. One very common effect of arousing it prematurely is that it rushes downwards into the lower centers of the body instead of upwards, resulting in the excitation of the most undesirable passions, which are apt to be intensified to such a degree that it is quite impossible for the man or woman to resist them. In a grip of such force, he is as helpless as a swimmer in the jaws of a shark. Such men or women become satyrs, monsters of depravity, being at the mercy of a force out of all proportion to the human power of resistance. And it is probable that they will attain certain supernormal powers, but these will serve only to bring them into contact with subhuman beings with which humanity is intended to hold no commerce, and to escape from this Thraldom may take more than one incarnation. What the hell is he talking about here? There is a school of black magic which purposely uses this power in this way, but the lower force centers, which is in this school, are always left severely alone by the followers of the good law or white magic. The premature unfoldment of kundalini intensifies also everything in the nature. Okay, hold on a second though. Before we move on from this, what are we talking about here? Anybody got a guess? A very common effect of arousing it prematurely is that it rushes down into the lower centers of the body instead of up, exciting the most undesirable passions. And these can be intensified to such a degree that it is quite impossible to resist them. He says you'll be like a swimmer helpless in the jaws of a shark. You may even obtain supernormal powers. But these powers will only help you come in contact with subhuman beings. You know what a subhuman being would be considered? What that would be? Think about that. What would a subhuman being be? Most people are going to say it, right? It's a demon. I don't even think it's a demon. I think it's something else, like lower elementals or something. No, it's a demon. Everything bad's a demon. It's like a chimney, word salad says. All right. There is a school of black magic which purposefully uses this power in this way. But the lower force centers which in this school are used are always left severely alone by followers of good law or white magic. The premature unfoldment of kundalini intensifies also everything in the nature, reaching in fact lower evil qualities more readily than good. Ambition, for example, in the mental body is very readily aroused and grows to an inordinate degree. Together with great intensification of intellectual power, there comes abnormal and satanic pride. The force of the kundalini is no ordinary force, but something resistless. If an uninstructed man or woman has the misfortune to arouse it, he should at once consult someone who fully understands such matters. As the Hatha Yoga Pradipika says, that's a long word, it gives liberation to yogis and bondage to fools. There are some cases where kundalini wakes spontaneously, though, so that a dull glow is felt, and it may even, though rarely, begin to move of itself. But in this case, it would probably cause severe pain, as since the passages are not prepared for it, it would have to clear its way by actually burning up a great deal of etheric dross, a process that's painful. In such cases, the force would usually rush up the interior of the spine instead of following the spiral course unto which the occultist is trained to guide it. An effort of will should be made, if possible, to arrest such an upward rush, but if that proves to be impossible, as is most likely, it will probably rush out through the head and escape into the atmosphere, probably doing no harm further than causing a slight weakening. But it may also cause a temporary loss of consciousness. The really serious dangers, however, are connected not with the upward force, but the downward rush. As already briefly mentioned, the principal function of kundalini and occult development is to pass through the etheric force centers and vivify these so that they bring through it into the physical consciousness astral experiences. Thus, the voice of the silence teaches that a vivification in this manner of the eyebrow centers enables one to hear the voice of the master, that is, of the ego or higher self. The explanation of this is that the pituitary body, when fully working, affords a perfect link between astral and physical consciousness. The mastery of kundalini has to be repeated in each incarnation because in each life the bodies are brand new. But after it has once been thoroughly achieved, repetition becomes an easy matter. The formation of the link between the physical consciousness and that of the ego has its correspondences also at higher levels, meaning for the ego, a link with the consciousness of the monad, and for the monad, a link with the consciousness of the logos. Age does not appear to affect the development of the chakras by means of kundalini, but health is a necessity, as only a strong body can endure the strain. That's some scary, like, if you really want to do this kundalini thing, right, that's some pretty scary shit. I'm just saying. If it's real, I'm not saying it's real. I'm not saying it's not. If it's real, which I tend to believe it's real. I don't know about all the colors and the wheels and all the little like things that the clairvoyants say they see. I don't know about all that. But I do know the energy's real. Just like a lot of us do. We know it's real. We have a sense it's real. But this is why you hear some people say that there are... this is a touchy subject, man, because it makes people run for the hills sometimes. But I really don't care. The truth is most of the time when people talk about the dangers of the occult, this is what they're talking about. Or they're either talking about that, right, dangers of alchemy or the occult. Well, alchemy has its own dangers too. If you're doing stuff in a physical lab and, you know, whatever you're inhaling or taking in your body. But also the kundalini stuff is dangerous. But what they don't talk about a lot is your psyche. Because I've met someone that was perfectly healthy, perfectly fine. Everything was, I think, at least I think. I didn't really know them that long, but they seemed like a healthy person. But then they got around messing with other stuff. And I think I might have told this story before. I don't think it had anything to do with kundalini. I know they were into Reiki. And they lost it, man. They ended up in the hospital, strapped to a chair. Their children were calling me trying to figure out what the hell happened. And I didn't do anything to this person. Didn't talk to them, nothing. They did all this on their own by messing with their psyches in a way they shouldn't. So all I'm saying is yeah, you know, I'm not trying to scare people, but when it comes to like you messing with energies that you're not aware of or messing with the psyche or things, you don't know how powerful symbols actually are. And you really don't know until you've experienced a lack of control of things like this. You really don't know how powerful your subconscious is. Most of us think we have everything under control and we know everything. We got the answers, and if everybody just saw life the way we did, everything would be great and gravy. But the truth is there's so much shit going on subconsciously in all of us that when you start messing with these things, symbols have a way of like connecting those two worlds, right? So be careful with your psyche. Be careful with your energy. And if you're going to do like practical or puffer alchemy, please be damn careful what you're inhaling or taking in your body. All right, so the next section is called the atomic web. We're going to get deeper into, I guess, the astral, according to this guy, the nature between the astral and the etheric, and what Arthur Powell has to say about it, which I am pretty excited to keep reading on. 3 minutes, maybe 4 tops. Restroom break. We'll be right back. Don't go anywhere. Stay with us. I'm Joe Roop. This is Lighting the Void Radio, live here, late nights, usually Tuesday through Thursday.
Increase their invisible hunt.
Woke up with the conviction I could change things. things. Every dream's a variation on the same theme. In the machine where blood money remains king, the gluttonous hold court and lick their plate clean. A songbird in the cage sings to usher in a new dawn and the promise that the day brings. First things first, fire up the ship. Equipped with the intravenous dark roll strip. My skull's thick, I learned to turn lead to gold bricks with skills to pay the phone bill and keep the stove lit. And roll with the brick roads twist, quick to snatch Caiaphas off his pulpit where lost souls drift. Something tapped the glass in my fishbowl, and for a moment I could see it clear as crystal. We're inching toward the edge, check your head, smell the coffee grinds, put the savior complex to bed. Woke up with the conviction I could change things. Every dream's a variation on the same theme. In the machine where blood money remains king, the gluttonous hold court and lick their plate clean.
Finally being processed, they made me adjust to modern times. I cure the fantasy obsession, paranoid delusions, I master work.
Blind man, lost man, dying on the cross man, revolutionary man, self-righteous man, pointing fingers at the next man, madman, running from an agent with a gun and badge somewhere in the Badlands. Sacred hands shape the world laid to waste. Tomorrow sacrifice for today's paper chase. There's flies on the drywall, closed circuit all seeing eyeballs, keeping close watch while the sky falls. The same snake that said turn stones to bread is working around the clock to mine the data in your head. Something's gotta give, bend, break or shift, take your pick. Watch them sit and pull the wings off a seraphim for kicks, and build Babel towers to pass the hours with high-tech tools at their fingertips like magic powers. Young grasshopper, cast your mask off, rock to sleep by the men that fleece the sheepfold the have-nots. Woke up with the conviction we could change things. Every dream's a variation on the same theme. In the machine where blood money remains king, the gluttonous hold court and lick their plate clean.
Cannibals, eat America.
Don't forget the taste of human flesh.
Are you quite sure that the tribe you're talking about are cannibals?
We're receiving signals loud and clear.
The shadow was growing. They cut right to the ground, the shadow stayed whole. They laid boards on it, the shadow came out on top. They shone lights on it, the shadow got blacker and clearer. They looked the other way, it went on growing. It got into eyes, the eyes went blind. The ones that fell down, it grew over and they vanished. The shadow was not filled, it went on growing.
There's a world now where people are in a contest trying to see who can get enough power to destroy the world first. It ain't even fit for a fable, but it's a real story.
Have you ever wondered, what do the stars say for me? Or, will the next month or the next year be more favorable? How about, are our two signs compatible? Each month, at the new moon, you can ask these questions live with me, your astrologer psychic, Mary DeCina, along with host of Lighting the Void, Joe Root. Join us at the new moon for Cosmic Conditions. We look forward to working with your energy.
Every new moon at 7 p.m. Pacific, 10 p.m. Eastern, right here on Fringe FM.
Broadcasting from Forest Tower Studios, all the way from the Deep South. Now, here is your host, Joe Root.
And not to pull your halo down around your neck and tug you off your cloud.
All right. Get back in this thing. Let me find this here.
But I'm more than just a little curious how.
All right, so we're going to continue this reading on the etheric double here This next chapter is called The Atomic Web. Thank you for joining us here on Lighting the Void Live Radio. Thanks for the 5. Mark, appreciate it, brother. Thanks for the super chat. What song is what? That one is The Noose by A Perfect Circle. The one before that is called Wendigo by Decca. I found out about Decca when I was reading, I narrated a couple of audio books. One of them being Anthony Tyler's book, the Dive Manual. I narrated that audio book, and he talked about Decca in his book and how the rapper Decca influenced his work, influenced him to write that book. And so I talked to Anthony, and then I downloaded as much Decca as I could, and he's one of my favorite rappers. And so it's spelled, let me make sure I tell you this right so you can look it up. Decca's D-E-C-A, the rapper Decca. And some of the stuff that you'll find on YouTube or whatever it'll be like Decca and Neon Brown. But the name of that track was Wendigo. Yeah, Mark's got 5 on it. Thanks, brother. All right, so this is called The Atomic Web. All right, we've already seen that there is a very close connection between the chakras in the astral body and those in the etheric double. Between these two sets of centers and interpenetrating them in a manner not easy to describe, there is a web or sheath composed of a single layer of physical atoms. I mean, what experiment? Anyways, the whole time I'm reading this stuff, it sounds so profound, but there's that voice in my head that's like, how the hell did they know this? How do you know this? It sounds so freaking cool, though, doesn't it? Now, between these two seats of centers and interpenetrating them in a manner not easy to describe, a web or a sheath composed of a single layer of physical atoms, closely woven, much compressed, and permeated with a special variety of prana. The prana, which normally comes from the astral into the physical, is such that it can pass with perfect ease through the atomic shield, but the latter is an absolute barrier to all other forces which cannot use the atomic matter of both planes. The shield is thus a protection provided by nature to prevent premature opening up of communication between the astral and the physical planes. Were it not for this wise provision made by the Creator, all kinds of astral experiences might pour into the physical consciousness, kind of like a Doctor Strange movie, where in the case of most men, they could be productive of nothing but harm. At any moment, an astral entity might introduce forces which ordinary man would be quite unprepared to meet and which would be entirely beyond his strength to cope with. A man would be liable to obsession by any astral entity who describes or who desired to seize his vehicle. Well, don't tell people that. That'll freak them out. Because, like, if you think about this, what he's saying right here goes directly against the reports of, like, William Buellman and other people. But you also have to consider that they always do, especially William, they always do some kind of protection before they get out of body, don't they? And we have read about experiences between Muldoon, other astral travelers, where people have slipped into alternate realities, other timelines, and things like that. We're not just talking about some psychobabble bullshit here. They've actually experienced this in a really crazy way. And all you got to do, if you don't know what I'm talking about, is go back in the show where we were reading Muldoon. And when we read 5 of the greatest books on out-of-body experiences that, in my opinion, there ever was. And that was like a month ago or 2 months ago. So it's all back in the live archives. All right. So now this atomic shield thus serves as an effective safeguard against these undesirable happenings. It also serves under normal conditions to prevent clear recollection of the sleep life from reaching the physical brain consciousness, and it accounts for the momentary unconsciousness which always occurs at death. Occasionally, the returning astral body succeeds in making a momentary impression on the etheric double and dense body, so that when the latter awake, there is a touch of vivid memory. This usually quickly vanishes, efforts to recall it rendering success more impossible, as each effort sets up physical brain vibrations which tend to overpower the subtler astral vibrations. So it's pretty clear, therefore, that an injury to the shield is a serious disaster, and such injury may occur in several ways. An emotional shock or any strong emotion of an evil character, which produces a kind of explosion in the astral body, may produce such an effect, rending apart the delicate web and, as we say, driving a person mad. A terrible fright or scare may do this, or an outburst of anger. Sitting for development, as spiritualists call the process, may also injure the web and throw open the doors which nature intended to keep closed. Certain drugs, here we go. Certain drugs, notably alcohol and all the narcotics of which tobacco is one, contain matter which, on breaking up volatilis, I don't know what that word is, volatilis, some of it passing from the physical to the astral state. Well, hey, you remember also, too, I have to say this, I know most of you read Robert Monroe's Journeys Out of the Body. Isn't it strange that how intense people's addictions are in the astral realm? When people get in the astral realm, or maybe they've died and they're stuck or whatever, there's been cases that have been reported about. Well, we don't know this for a fact, but it's pretty trippy that he's saying this. And these other cases talk about people that are so addicted to either alcohol, sex, or tobacco, or drugs, that they'll do anything to try to feel that a fulfillment again. Whether it's like in Monroe's Journeys Out of the Body, he met a man that was trying to feel his sexual desire for a woman that he was obsessed with in his life. So he was stuck in this place where this woman was still alive, but he was dead, right? And she was sleeping with another man, and this astral being was actually there trying to jump into this dude's body so that he could feel his obsession. Same thing with alcoholics. I forget what book it was. I always forget this book, but they would go to bars. They saw these astral beings in bars trying to enter into people that were drunk so that they could feel that feeling again of having alcohol in their system. Not trying to freak you out. These are only reports. Doesn't mean it's real. But what I find fascinating is how, again, as we're void walking here, you got two people like Monroe and these astral travelers and this occultist talking about some of the same things in different ways. Students of dietetics, especially those who have studied the effects of toxins, will be interested to learn that even tea and coffee contain the class of material described, though in quantities so small that only after long continued abuse of them would the effect manifest itself. Now, when this takes place, these constituents rush out through the chakras in the direction opposite to that for which they are intended, and after doing this repeatedly, they injure and finally destroy this delicate web. There are only two ways in which the deterioration or destruction may be brought about, and according to the type of person concerned and the proportion of the constituents in his or her etheric and astral bodies. In the first type, the rush of volatilizing matter actually burns away the web and thus breaks down nature's barrier. In the second type, the volatile constituents harden the atom, checking and crippling its pulsations so that it can no longer carry the special form of prana which wields it into the web. The web thus becomes, as it were, ossified, so that instead of too much coming through from one plane to another, we have very little of any kind coming through at all. The two types are readily recognizable. In the former case, we have instances of delirium, tremens, obsession, and certain forms of insanity. In the latter case, which is by far the more common, we notice a general deadening of the higher feelings and qualities resulting in materialism, brutality, animalism, and loss of self-control. It is well known that those who indulge excessively in narcotics, such as tobacco, will persist in their self-indulgence even at the expense of the pain or discomfort of their neighbors. Their finer susceptibilities have to that extent become blunted. As the consciousness of the ordinary man cannot normally use atomic matter, either physical or astral, there is normally no possibility of conscious communication between the two planes. As, however, he purifies his vehicles, he becomes able to function in the atomic matter and then is able to carry his consciousness along a direct road from one atomic level to another. In this case, the atomic web fully retains its position and activity, permitting the consciousness to pass from one plane to another, while at the same time fulfilling its purpose of preventing close contact with those lower subplanes from which many kinds of undesirable influences are liable to come. The only safe way, therefore, for genuine students of occultism is not to force in any way the development of psychic powers, but to wait for them to unfold. I think that's a pretty important statement, right? To wait for them to unfold, as they will unfold in the normal course of evolution. By this way, all the benefits will be obtained and the dangers avoided. So don't try to force yourself to have psychic powers, which I'm sure nowadays is big. Lots of people might be doing, though. Let's see. So the next one, we're going to talk about birth. It's pretty crazy stuff, man. It's like reading a sci-fi magazine, and yet I got to tell you, man, the stuff that this guy is talking about, there's already been at least 8 to 10 different parallels I've found in other books. You know, doesn't mean it's real. I'm just saying it's there. All right, so now it will be useful to study the etheric double and its connection with the birth and death of the physical body. Now, those who have studied the mechanisms of reincarnation are pretty familiar with the fact that in the case of the etheric body, a factor comes into play which does not operate in the case of the astral or mental bodies. The etheric double is actually built in advance for the incoming ego by an elemental, which is the joint thought form of the 4 Devarjas. Devarjas. What is that? Each of whom presides over one of the 4 etheric subplanes of physical matter. The primary business of this building elemental is to construct the etheric mold into which the physical particles of new baby bodies are to be built. The form and color of this elemental vary in different cases. At first, it accurately expresses in shape and size the infant body it has to build. Now, clairvoyants sometimes see this doll-like figure hovering about, and afterwards within the body of the mother, and have occasionally mistaken it for the soul of the coming baby instead of the mold of its physical body. As soon as the fetus has grown to the size of the mold and is ready for birth, the form of the next stage at which it has to aim is unfolded. The size, shape, and condition of the body, as it is to be, so far as the work of the elemental is concerned, at the time when it proposes to leave it. After the elemental has retired, all further growth of the body is under the control of the ego himself. So this guy is saying that an elemental molds what a person's shape is going to be before they actually come into that shape. In both these cases, the elemental uses itself as the mold. Its colors largely represent the qualities required in the body it has to build. And its form is also usually that destined for it. As soon as its work is done, there's no power left to hold together its particles, and the elemental disintegrates. So in determining the quality of etheric matter to be used in building the etheric body, we have 2 things to consider. First, the type of matter, regarded from the point of view of the 7 rays or vertical divisions, and secondly, the quality of the matter, regarded from the point of view of its coarseness or fineness or horizontal divisions. The former ray type is determined by the physical permanent atom, which has the type and subtype impressed upon it. The latter is determined by the past karma of the person, the building elemental being charged with the production of the type of the physical body suited to the man's requirements. The elemental, in fact, consists of that portion of the prarabdha, or karma of the individual, which is to express itself in the physical body. On the selection made by the building elemental depends, for example, whether the body will be naturally clever or stupid, placid or irritable, energetic or lazy, sensitive or unresponsive. The potentialities of heredity are latent in the maternal ovum and the paternal spermatozoon, and from these the elemental makes his selection according to the requirements of the case. This is pretty out there, right? Although the elemental in charge of the body from the first, the ego only comes into contact with his future habitation later, sometime before physical birth. If the characteristics the elemental has to impose are few in number, it is able to withdraw early and leave the ego in full control of the body. Where, however, much time is required to develop the limitations needed, the elemental may retain its position until the body is 7 years old. So some people actually, according to this guy, have that elemental just hanging around until they turn 7. Damn. Etheric matter for the infant body is taken from the body of the mother, hence the importance of the latter supplying her body with only the purest materials. Unless the elemental is charged with some special development in the way of features, such as unusual beauty, or the reverse, the principal agency at work in this direction will be the thoughts of the mother and the thought forms which float around her. The new astral body comes into connection with the etheric double at a very early stage and exercises considerable influence over its formation, and the mental body also working through it upon the nervous organization. That's wild to think. If that's really true, that's some pretty wild shit. What's up, Grant? All right, so the next one's death. Now, we've previously seen that under certain conditions, the etheric double may be separated from the dense body, though it's always connected with it by a thread or a cord of etheric matter. At death, the double finally withdraws from the dense body and may be seen as a violet mist, gradually condensing into a figure, which is the counterpart of the expiring person and attached to the dense body by a glistening thread. This thread, or magnetic cord, is snapped at the moment of death. As the Buddhic life web, accompanied by prana, disentangles itself from dense physical matter at death, it draws itself together in the heart round the permanent atom. The atom, web, and prana then rise along the secondary sushumna nadi into the third ventricle of the brain, thence to point of junction of the parietal and occipital sutures, and finally out of the body. The life web remains enshrouding the physical permanent atom in the causal body until time comes for a new physical body to be built. The withdrawal of the etheric double, and with it, of course, prana, destroys the integral unity of the physical body, thus leaving it merely as a collection of independent cells. The life of the separate cells themselves continues, as evidenced by the well-known fact that hairs on a corpse will sometimes continue to grow. But the moment the etheric double withdraws, and consequently prana ceases to circulate, the lower lives, or the cells, run rampant and begin to break down the hitherto definitely organized body. The body is thus never more alive than when it is dead, but it is alive in its units and dead in its totality, if that makes any sense. Alive as congeries, dead as a whole organism. And as Eliphas Levi, a great occultist, says, the corpse would not decompose if it were dead. All the molecules which compose it are living and struggle to separate. And that is in Isis Unveiled, also on page 480. So when the double finally quits the dense body, it does not go far away, but usually floats over it. And in this condition, it is known as the wraith. So anytime you read a text that someone's talking about a wraith, W-R-A-I-T-H, that's just someone floating over their dead body. And sometimes appears to those with whom it's closely bound up as a cloudy figure, very dully conscious and speechless. Unless disturbed by tumultuous distress or violent emotion, the state of consciousness is dreamy and peaceful. It is during the withdrawal of the double, as well as afterwards, that the whole of the man's past life passes swiftly in review before the ego, every forgotten nook and corner of the memory yielding up its secrets, picture by picture, event by event. Your life literally does flash before your eyes, or your memory. In these few seconds, the ego lives over again their whole life, seeing its successes and failures, loves and hatreds. It perceives the predominant tendency of the whole, and the ruling thought of the life asserts itself, marking the region in which the chief part of the post-mortem life will be spent. As a book that I cannot pronounce, but I'm going to try to pronounce it, called the Kashida Kopanishad. I got to put that in chat. Anybody needs to get this book and read it, because I'm going to. The Kashida Kopanishad. Can y'all say that word? Like if I put it in chat and see how fast you can say it. Boom. There it is. As the Kashida Kopanishad describes it, at death, prana gathers everything together and withdrawing from the body hands everything onwards to the knower, who is the receptacle of all. This stage is usually followed by a brief period of peaceful unconsciousness due to the withdrawal of the etheric matter and its entanglement with the astral body, thus preventing the man from functioning either in the physical or the astral world. Some men shake themselves free from the etheric envelope in a few moments. Others rest within it for hours, days, or even weeks, though usually the process does not take longer than a few hours. As the days pass, the higher principles gradually disengage themselves from the double, and the latter then becomes, in its turn, an etheric corpse, which remains near the dense one, both disintegrating together. These etheric wraiths are often seen in churchyards, sometimes as violet or bluish-white mists of lights, but often presenting an unpleasant appearance as they pass through various stages of decomposition. So, you know, a lot of times people that have, reported seeing ghosts, oh, they were, old-looking, crazy-looking. Maybe that's what they saw. One of the great advantages of cremation is that by destroying the dense body, the etheric body also loses its nidus and so rapidly disintegrates, which is a good thing, according to this guy. So if a man is so misguided as to wish to cling to their physical body or their life, and even to his own corpse, the preservation of the dead body, either by burial or embalming, offers a distinct temptation to him to do so and immensely facilitates this unfortunate process or purpose. Cremation entirely prevents any attempt at partial and unnatural temporary reunion of these principles. In addition, there are certain unpleasant forms of black magic, fortunately rare in Western countries at least, which make use of this decaying physical body. The etheric body of a dead person may also be similarly used in a variety of ways. This card just fell out for some reason. The Ace of Pentacles. It may similarly be used in a variety of ways. All of these possibilities are avoided by the wholesome practice of cremation. It is quite impossible for a dead person to feel the effects of the fire on his discarded body for so long as it is dead. The astral and etheric matter have been completely separated from the dense physical. Although it is quite impossible for a dead person to get back entirely into his dead body, yet in the case of one who knows nothing beyond purely physical life, and is crazy with fear at being cut off from it, it is possible for him or her, in his frantic effort to keep in touch with the physical life, to get a hold of the etheric matter of the discarded body and drag it about with them. And this may be the cause of considerable suffering, entirely unnecessary, and easily avoided by the practice of cremation. Doesn't this make you want to just get cremated just in case he's right? Just in case this is true, I think I'll go for just put me in the furnace, man. You know what I mean? What's up, Hope? Long time no see. How are you? In the case of people who cling desperately to their physical existence, the astral body cannot altogether separate from the etheric, and they awaken still surrounded by etheric matter. The condition is very unpleasant, as such a person would be shut out from the astral world by the shell of their etheric double. And at the same time, the loss of physical sense organs prevents them from coming fully into touch with earth life, so you're in kind of a weird limbo. Consequently, they drift about, lonely and dumb and terrified, in a thick and gloomy fog, unable to hold intercourse with either plane. Yeah, fuck that. Just in case this guy's right, I'm just getting cremated, because that sounds freaky to me, man. In process of time, the etheric shell will wear out in spite of the struggles, though usually not until after he has suffered intensely. Kindly people among the dead and others endeavor to help the class of person described, but seldom with success. This is why you see people trying to help stuck spirits all the time, because they're stuck, you know. Yeah, this is freaking nuts. You're right, Mike. Sometimes a person in this condition may endeavor to get in touch once again with the physical plane through a medium, though usually the medium's, quote, spirit guides sternly forbid them access, knowing that the medium runs the risk of being obsessed or maddened by this. Occasionally, an unconscious medium, usually a sensitive young girl, may be seized upon, but the attempt can be successful only if the girl's ego has weakened his hold on his vehicles by indulging in undesirable thoughts and passions. What the? Occasionally, also, a human soul wandering in this gray world may succeed in partially obsessing an animal, those most commonly seized upon being the less developed, like cattle, sheep, or swine, though cats and dogs or monkeys may also be used in this way. This appears to be the modern fifth race substitute for the awful life of the vampire found in the fourth race peoples. Once entangled with an animal, it is possible to disentangle oneself only gradually and by considerable effort, extending probably for many days. Freedom usually comes only at the death of the animal, and even then there remains an astral entanglement to shake off. Any questions? I got some questions. You know, this is weird. To be safe, just, you know, do your work, be nice to people, get cremated. Yeah. You don't have to deal with none of this stuff. I kind of want to read that chapter again, because I'm pretty sure, not that chapter, but that paragraph. Yeah, can we? I'd hate to do that, but I got to figure this out, okay? Sometimes a person in this condition may endeavor to get in touch once again with the physical plane. This is like somebody hanging on to the physical world, like they're scared to pass or something. And they'll do it through a medium, though usually the medium's spirit guides will forbid them to do this, knowing that the medium runs the risk of being obsessed or maddened. Occasionally, an unconscious medium. Here's the weird part of this. Occasionally, an unconscious medium, usually a sensitive young girl, may be seized upon. Seized upon? But the attempt can be successful only if the girl's ego has weakened his hold on his vehicles by indulging in undesirable thoughts and passions. Occasionally, also, a human soul wandering in this gray world may succeed in partially obsessing an animal, those most commonly seized upon being the less developed, cattle, sheep, or swine. But sometimes cats and dogs or monkeys are also used in this way. This appears to be the modern fifth race substitute for the awful life of the vampire found in fourth race peoples. Now, once entangled with an animal, it is possible to disentangle oneself only gradually and by considerable effort, extending probably for many days. Freedom usually comes only at the death of the animal, and even then there remains an astral entanglement to shake off. So if you're not entangled with some young girl who's unconscious, whose thoughts or passions, this is what I'm confused about. If the girl's ego has weakened his hold on his vehicles by indulging in undesirable thoughts and passions. What is going on here? What is this? What's all this about? They are describing druid shit. They use young girls as channels. What? All right, I'm just going to go ahead and say it. Yeah, I'm a conscious explorer and void walker. One, I don't imagine myself, I don't know about you, holding on to physical life after I'm dead so hard that I'm going to be doing any of this whacked out stuff. But two, there are some things that I won't get involved with. I'm not trying to figure out if this is one of these things about conscious exploration I'm not going to try to figure out. All right. When the body passes into the death world, I'm just going to transition. I'm not going to try to hang around, cling to an animal or a girl or a monkey or a dog or what is this, man? I'm sure this guy was the life of the parties. Yeah, right. This is weird. This is weird. It is the occult, though. There are some weird people in it. All right. So let's talk about healing. So we have already seen that a man in vigorous health is continually throwing off from his body vital emanations which may be absorbed by others. So you're in such vitality that you heal other people around you. And this way, the latter will be strengthened and mirror illnesses may be cured or at least recovery expedited. I wonder if that's why, when Christ was walking through the streets and that lady touched the hem of his shirt or whatever, and she's like, if I just touch you, I'll know I'll be healed. Remember that? As, however, the currents of prana are amenable to the will, it is possible for a man consciously to direct the streams of vitality which pour out of him, as well as greatly to augment their natural flow. By directing the currents on to a patient who is depleted of strength owing to that fact that his spleen is not doing its work properly, considerable help towards recovery may be given. The additional vitality poured in by the healer keeping the patient's body or bodily machinery working until it's sufficiently recovered to manufacture supplies of its own prana itself. The healing of the weak by the strong may thus be achieved in certain cases, merely by physical proximity sometimes, the process being either entirely unconscious and automatic, or it may be assisted and expedited to almost any extent by conscious effort. Much benefit may often be given merely by pouring into the patient copious streams of vitality, which will flood the patient's system with vitalizing energy, or the operator may direct the flow to the particular portion of the body which is out of health. Merely to increase the circulation of prana is sufficient to cure lots of minor diseases. All nervous diseases imply a jangled condition of the etheric double, and that is also the cause of digestive troubles and sleeplessness. Headaches are usually caused by congestion, either of the blood or the vital fluid, sometimes called magnetism. Well, headaches are kind of weird, number one, because we don't have pain centers in our head, I don't think. Or at least that's what I've heard, so. Headaches have always been weird. A strong current directed by the healer through the head of the sufferer will wash away the congested matter and the headache will disappear. These methods are comparatively simple and by no means difficult to apply, though a skillful healer, especially if they're clairvoyant, can improve on them enormously. One such improvement which demands some knowledge of anatomy and physiology is to make a mental picture of the diseased organ and then imagine it as it should be in health. The strong thought will mold etheric matter into the desired form, which will help nature to build us new tissues much more rapidly than would otherwise be possible. This kind of sounds like Dr. Stylianos Ateshlis' book, because he talks about that, like the spiritual vitality. And he's had a lot of people that he's healed and have claimed to be able to, I don't know if you read any of his books, but I think he straightened out a lady's back or something just by imagining it and putting his hands on it. And then there's other people that say that Daskalos was one of the hidden masters of the Theosophical Society. So I don't know. It's pretty cool. They're talking about the same things here. A still more thorough method is to create the organ in mental matter than to build it into astral matter. then to densify it with etheric matter, and finally to build it into the mold, gaseous liquids, and solids, utilizing materials available in the body and supplying from outside and deficiencies. What the hell? A methodical and effective way to set to work to heal magnetically is as follows. The patient assumes a comfortable position. By the way, this is not advice or whatever. We're just studying here. The patient assumes a comfortable position, either sitting or lying down, and is instructed to relax as thoroughly as possible. A very convenient method is for the patient to sit in an easy chair with solid flat arms, the operator sitting sideways on the arms and thus slightly above the patient. The operator then makes passes with his hands over the patient's body or over the portion in which he proposes to treat magnetically, making an effort of will to withdraw from the patient the congested or diseased etheric matter. These passes may be made without actually touching the patient, though it is often an assistance to lay the whole hand on the skin gently and lightly. After each pass, the operator must take care to throw off from himself the etheric matter he has withdrawn. Otherwise, some of it may remain in his system, and he may presently find himself suffering from a complaint similar to that which he is trying to cure in the patient. Many cases of this kind are on record. Thus, an operator may remove pain from a patient's tooth or elbow, only to find himself presently suffering from toothache or pain in the elbow. In some cases where repeated treatments are given, an operator who neglects to throw off the disease matter which he has extracted may make himself seriously ill and even become a chronic sufferer. Look, I believe in miracles and healing and all that stuff, but I don't think, it's not that I don't believe that this stuff happens, okay? Like that it can happen. It's just my trust in people and them telling the truth about what's going on is not very good. Does that make sense? Like, I believe that this could happen for sure with the right person. But from my experience, most people are full of shit. Just saying. Including myself. I'm full of shit too sometimes. Anyways, that's the other voice talking. All right. So AP Senate gives a curious case of a lady who was cured of chronic rheumatism and then went to live in a part of Europe other than that in which the mesmeric operator resided. 4 years afterwards, the operator died, and the old rheumatic trouble at once returned to the lady with its former virulence. In this case, it would seem that the unhealthy magnetism which the operator had withdrawn from the patient, but didn't destroy it, had for years been hanging around the aura of the operator, and on his death had at once flown back to where it originally belonged. Or it could have been a coincidence, right? You know. Usually, it is sufficient to jerk the hands sharply downwards and away from oneself, or the magnetism may be thrown into a basin of water, the water afterwards, of course, being thrown away. The process may be assisted after this preliminary portion of the treatment is completed by washing the hands in water before commencing the next and more positive part of the treatment. It's also said to be possible to direct the unhealthy magnetism to certain classes of elementals, where it will find its appropriate sphere. The Bible parable of the herd of swine may well be an allegorical description of this process. It would certainly seem to be preferable for something of this kind to be done than for the unhealthy magnetism to be left just floating about near the aura, either of the healer or of any others who may happen to be near it. A slight variation of this method, especially useful in the case of local congestion, is to place the hands one on either side of the affected area and to direct a stream of cleansing magnetism from the right hand to the left hand, and this magnetism driving out the patient's congested material. The way having been prepared, the next stage is to pour into the patient's one's own magnetic fluid and prana. And this is done by making similar passes, though this time with a strong effort will to pour out one's own force into the patient. This, as before, may be done by means of long sweeping passes over the whole body, or by shorter passes over a special area, or again, The two hands may be used, the current being passed from the right hand to the left through the area that is being treated. The student will readily recognize the desirability of the healer being himself perfectly healthy, because otherwise he's liable to pour into the patient some of his own unhealthy magnetism. It should be noted that in magnetic healing, clothing is somewhat of a barrier, silk being in this respect the worst. The minimum possible, therefore, according to circumstances, should be worn by the patient. So just get them naked. Is that what you're saying? Take off all your clothes so that I can rub my hands left and right on you and heal you. And then I'll throw the energy into a bucket of water. Anyways, from the fact that certain forms of insanity are due to defects in the etheric brain, its particles not corresponding perfectly with the denser physical particles, and thus being unable to bring through properly vibrations from the higher vehicles, we may surmise that such cases might lend themselves to cure by magnetic treatment. There are, of course, other methods of affecting the etheric body, because the connection between mental, astral, and etheric bodies is so close that any one of these three may affect the other. So generally speaking, it may be said that anything which promotes physical health also reacts favorably on the higher vehicles. Unused muscles, for example, not only tend to deteriorate, but produce a congestion of magnetism. This means a weak place in the etheric double, through which unpleasant germs, such as those of infection, could enter. As well, mental or astral ill health will almost surely, sooner or later, be reflected as physical disease. A person who is astrally, quote, fussy, who allows his astral body to fritter away his strength on petty little emotions, troubles, and worries, not only is apt to produce unpleasant and disturbing effects on the astral bodies of other sensitive persons, but frequently the perpetual astral disturbance reacts to the etheric upon the dense physical body, and all sorts of nervous diseases are produced. So don't be astrally fussy. Nearly all nerve troubles, for example, are the direct result of unnecessary worry and emotion, and would soon disappear if the patient could be taught to hold his vehicle still and peaceful. Magnetic healing blends almost imperceptibly into mesmerism, which we shall therefore proceed to examine. Mesmerism. I was wondering what that meant before. Like, what is mesmerism? You know, what is he talking about there? Let's go to the chat and see what you guys are saying. No. They're describing, okay. It might be sort of a mechanism of placebo. Yeah, it could be. Reiki, energy entanglement, how to destroy it. That's why the massage therapist always washes hands up to elbows before moving on to another client. Showering after work is good. Yeah, I don't look. This isn't my area of expertise. Like I can definitely, like, I understand energy. I mean, I can feel energy. I have been told I have healing hands, but not like, you know, just moving my hands over somebody. Not really. I have to actually be touching them. But you could give somebody a massage and they would feel like they're healed a lot of times. If you do it right, I think. If you do it with love, it's just like cooking. You can throw some food in a pot, you know, and just cook it, or throw something in the microwave, or you can put a little love into it and it just turns into something even better, right? All right, anyways, mesmerism. Now, this student should recognize the perfectly clear and definite distinction between hypnotism and mesmerism. There are two different things here. Hypnotism is derived from the Greek hypnos, meaning sleep, stands literally for the art of putting to sleep. It usually results from a nervous paralysis brought about by a slight strain either to the nerves of the eye or in some other way. It is not in itself an injurious state to be in, though it may, of course, be turned to ends either good or bad. It frequently makes the subject insensible to pain, and it may give the system a rest which may be highly beneficial. It is primarily a self-induced condition, Its main result is that it usually places the subject to a greater or lesser extent under the control of the operator who, within certain limits, which vary according to the nature and character of the subject and the degree of the hypnosis, as well as the power and skill of the operator, may be compelled to do what the operator wishes. Mesmerism, however, depends upon a quite different principle. The word itself is derived from Frederick Mesmer, who was born in 1734 and died in 1815, a doctor of Vienna who, towards the end of the 18th century, discovered that he could effect cures by means of influences proceeding from the hand, to which he gave the name animal magnetism. The essence of mesmerism is that the operator drives out or forces back the patient's own magnetism or vital fluid and replaces it with his own fluid. The natural effect of this is that the patient loses all power of feeling in that portion of his body from which his own fluid has been expelled. We have previously seen that the power of feeling depends on the transmission of contacts to the astral centers through the matter of the etheric double. When therefore the etheric matter is removed, the connection between the dense physical body and the astral body is broken, and consequently there can be no sensation experienced. The withdrawal of the vital fluid does not in any way interfere with the circulation of the blood, for the portion of the body concerned remains warm. That makes it possible to drive out a patient's own etheric matter form, say an arm or a leg, so that complete anesthesia in the limb results. Oh, dude, that would be cool. Because when I hear the word mesmerism, like I'm mesmerized, I think something totally different. I don't think of this. The mesmeric process being in such a case purely local, the patient will retain full, normal consciousness in the brain. All that happens is that a local anesthetic has been applied to the limb concerned. Under such mesmeric anesthetic surgical operations, both major and minor have been performed. And perhaps the best known collection of such operations is recorded in the book Mesmerism in India, first published in 1842 by Dr. Esdaili, another surgeon, one Dr. Elliotson, who performed large numbers of operations under mesmeric anesthesia in London about 3/4 of a century ago. At this time, chloroform was unknown, and every operating room was a damn torture chamber. Graphic and interesting accounts of the work of these two pioneers may be found in the Rationale of Mesmerism. I don't even know if I want to read that. Graphic and interesting accounts of this work. It's found in a book called The Rationale of Mesmerism by A.P. Sennett. The mesmeric processes may be pushed further to the extent of driving out the subject's own magnetic fluid from the brain and replacing it by that of the operator. In this case, the subject entirely loses control of his own body, and the control passes to the operator, who can then make the subject's body do what the operator wishes. Get the fuck out of here. Come on, that can't be real. I got to read this book now, The Rationale of Mesmerism by A.P. Sennett. So this guy is saying that you could take control of someone's magnetic, quote, magnetic fluid in their body. Either give them total anesthesia of that area of the body, or you could literally take control of a person. The mesmeric process may be pushed further to the extent of driving out the subject's own magnetic fluid from the brain and replacing it by that of the operator. In this case, the subject entirely loses control of their own body, and the control passes to the operator, who can then make the subject's body do what the operator wishes. An interesting consequence of replacing the subject's magnetic fluid by that of the operator is that a stimulus applied to the operator may appear to be felt by the subject, or on the other hand, a stimulus applied to the subject may be felt by the operator. Are you shitting me? Like this can't be real. My dentist had done that when she was a patient herself. No needles before drilling. She said that it worked. It didn't feel pain. The dentist used self-hypnosis or a form of meditation. Yeah, this is not hypnosis though. This is something entirely different. Like, as according to, like, how many people would, like, think about it? There's already been, number one, there's already been experiments about this. Like, when people get power over other people like this, they tend to get super power hungry. I forget the name of the experiment, but that's a whole other show. I think we should talk about that. But anyway, I gotta let's see if I may be interpreting this totally wrong. I don't know. All right, so for example, suppose that an arm has been mesmerized, the subject's own magnetic fluid being replaced by that of the operator. Then if the operator's hand be pricked, the subject may receive the feeling, owing to the fact that the nerve, either of the operator, has been connected to the subject's brain. The subject, therefore, receiving the message from the operator's nerve ether, supposes it to have come from his own nerve ether, and so responds accordingly. Now, this phenomenon is usually known as magnetic sympathy, and in many cases may be read of in the literature of the subject. It is not essential to make passes with the hands in order to mesmerize. The only use of the hands is to concentrate the fluid and perhaps to help the imagination of the operator. Anything which assists the imagination, making it easier, that belief upon which the action of the will so largely depends. A skillful mesmerist, however, can manage quite well without any passes whatever, achieving his result merely by looking at a subject and using his will. So you're telling me if I learned how to do this, I could just look at somebody and take control over a part of their body? Don't tempt me with that kind of power. I don't think you should attempt anybody with that kind of power. I mean, yeah, it'd be cool to heal people, but I don't think this is real. I'm sorry. Like, I'd have to, and anything is possible. I'm open-minded, okay? I really am. But this right here, I would definitely have to witness or experience for me to go, oh yeah, that's real. That's 100% real. Come on, man. It doesn't mean that don't get polar about it. Don't get upset with me. It's not even worth getting upset about. Like, this is just one of those things, kind of like Bigfoot or fairies or things like that, like I would have to experience for me to say that is real. It would appear that the etheric mechanism of the body consists of two distinct divisions, the one unconscious and connected with the sympathetic, the other conscious and voluntary and connected with the cerebrospinal system. And that is possible to mesmerize the latter. It's possible to mesmerize the cerebrospinal system, but not the sympathetic nerves. What? A mesmerist would not, therefore, usually be able to interfere with the ordinary vital processes of a patient's body, such as breathing, or the circulation of the blood. That makes sense. So this may perhaps be the explanation of the statement in Theosophy that prana exists in two main forms in the physical body, energizing prana in the etheric double and automatic prana in the dense body. As in the case of magnetic healing, it is obviously eminently desirable that a mesmerist should be physically healthy. For a healer or magnetizer pours into the patient not only prana, but also his own emanations, and in this way it is possible for the operator to convey physical disease to the subject. Further, as astral and mental matter are also thrown into the subject, moral and mental diseases may likewise be transferred. See how much? Okay, we're almost done with this. For similar reasons, a mesmerist may thus, even unconsciously, gain great influence over his subject. Yeah, you think? A far greater power that is generally known. And any quality of heart or mind possessed by the mesmerist is very readily transferred to the subject. Hence, the avenues of possible danger in this respect are apparent. Yeah, Obviously, like if it's real, you could have some dude hypnotize you like a freaking dirty vampire and then just take over your body. And you just do his bidding. Like, you know what's even weirder about that is I think some women would actually like that. Some dudes even. Mesmerism purely for curative purposes, by those who understand what they are doing and can be trusted not to abuse their powers, has much to be said for it. But mesmerism for other purposes is distinctly forbidden or not advisable. Yeah, good luck with that. Because if what you're saying is real, there has to be some people. If it's real, we're talking about X-Men powers here, okay? Like, if it's real, then there are definitely people that are using it in bad ways, for sure. An advantage possessed by mesmerism over healing of disease by will is that when will forces are poured down into the physical body, there is a danger of driving the disease back into the subtler vehicles from which it came, thus inhibiting the final working out to the physical plane of evil, which has its own origin in mind and emotion. Curative mesmerism is free from this danger. So an interesting example of magnetic or mesmeric healing is the Buddhist parita or pirit ceremony, meaning literally blessings, in which the monks sit in a circle or hollow square and hold in their hands a rope about as thick as a clothesline, from which strings run to a large pot of water. Relays of monks recite texts from the scriptures for many days continuously, keeping clearly in their minds the will to bless people. Oh, that's cool. The water becomes very highly charged with magnetism, and then it is then distributed to the people, or a sick man may hold a thread connected to the rope. It may be noted in passing that it is possible to mesmerize plants and procure specific and distinct results in stimulation of their growth as well. There are probably very few who practice this consciously, at least in Western countries, though the fact that some persons have a lucky hand with plants and flowers may perhaps be partially explained on the lines indicated that we're talking about. A more common cause, however, of such phenomena has to do with the composition of the etheric and other bodies and the relationship of the person to the elementals, the most friendly to him being those whose element is preponderant in his vehicles. Nature spirits, possessing little sense of responsibility and wills not strongly developed, can usually readily be dominated mesmerically and can then be employed in many ways to carry out the will of the magician. That I do know that is kind of true. So as long as the tasks given to them are within their powers, they will be faithfully and surely executed. So it is also possible to mesmerize persons who have recently died and who are still hovering close about in their astral bodies. This book is trippy, man. But I will say that it's kind of freaky. But there's some stuff that other books, like I said before, man, there's other books that correspond with what's talking about in here. So, in the next part, it's called Shells and Shields. This is how, I guess this is shells and shields that you can make yourself to protect yourself. We'll get into that later, but yeah, it's pretty cool. I know a lot of people ask me about like what this person just said as far as like magic is concerned. Like, why would you invoke demons or elementals, or why did Solomon do the same thing? Well, it's, once you get control of them, then they can do your bidding in good ways, right? So that the demons that Solomon took control of helped him build a temple. But it wasn't to gain power. It wasn't to do anything else. It was to build his temple. And you know what the temple of God really is, right? It's not a building. It's you. So mesmerism. It's just it's spelled just like regular mesmerism. Yeah, y'all can look this up, but this book again is called The Etheric Double: The Health Aura of Man by Arthur E. Powell. And the next time we get into this, we'll be talking about shells and shields, how to protect yourself and all that other stuff. Very trippy, man. Don't take everything we say as 100% real. In my experience, try everything, experiment with everything, find the truth your own way. And then once you do, come let me know. Night, y'all. Sweet dreams.
So